So I'm going to talk to you today about this work that my colleagues and I recently published in Proceedings B. It's about the evolution of coloration and opsins in tarantula spiders. And my slide. Okay, so just a quick introduction to tarantulas. They're very large Mygalomorph spiders and they're very hairy. As you can see from the picture on the left, they have a lot of different colors. So blue color, green color, purple. You can find all of these readily among lots of different tarantulas from across the world. And as you can see on the bottom right, this chart indicates where you can find tarantulas, and you will find them in any warm area almost. I think North Africa probably has some more than the chart is showing. And there are almost 1,000 different species of tarantulas. So perhaps when you combine this with their large distribution, maybe it's no surprise that tarantulas can be found in so many different colors. But one thing that scientists have struggled to explain is why tarantulas are so colorful. There's one study from 1978 that suggests how one particular species, Aphanopelma chalcades, is active from about 4 p.m. plus, so crepuscular to nocturnal hours. And then a further study in 1989 said this same species, Aphanopelma chalcades, probably cannot see colors or perceive them. But this is just one species, and when there's almost 1,000 species, one is not a good enough representation to say that no tarantulas are able to see colors. And really what I wanted to do in this study is to test the functions of blue and green coloration. So the first step is to reconstruct the ancestral history of these two traits, blue color and green color. Then I wanted to ask if either color has an aposematic function. So does it correlate with stridulation, which is their ability to make a hissing noise to scare the predators? Or does it correlate with urtication? So many neotropical tarantulas have specialized setae on the abdomens, sometimes on the pedipalps, that they can use for defense. Then I wanted to look at whether either color correlates with lifestyle choices such as arboreality, like living in the trees or dwelling in the ground. And the last part of this talk will focus on opsins in tarantulas. So, you know, opsin proteins, they do a lot of different things. They're involved in many different processes, but they are involved in perceiving colors among many other things. So we had a look at those. So this is the evolution of greenness. The tip taxa here are different genus, and the red boxes are old world genus, orange boxes, neotropical new world genus. The pie charts represent the probability distributions, the posterior probabilities of having the color green at that node. And then the green bars intersecting the branches are gains of the trait. And so you can see there are 8 gains of green coloration according to this analysis, and 6 out of the 8 are at the terminal tip nodes. This is kind of interesting. It's saying that perhaps green is evolving relatively recently. It's not a perfect match, but you know, evolving in the tip and not being present in the ancestor would suggest that perhaps it's a newer trait. Then the mirror tree on the right is the evolution of arboreality, which is living in the trees. And some green tarantulas don't live in the trees, but as you can see here, many of them do. And so when we perform the correlative tests, which are the Pagel tests, this is what we see. We see the color green is most strongly associated with a scenario where the evolution depends on arboreality. But what does that mean? Green depends on arboreality. Well, how does it depend on arboreality? So we ran some more tests, and the most highly supported model is a scenario where green coloration depends on the presence of arboreality. So this graph explains what we're finding more clearly. The most highly supported scenario by my data set is that tarantulas, they live on the ground. They later evolve the ability to live in the trees. And then after some time, they gain some green coloration. And this might make sense because if they're in the trees, they're surrounded by some leaves, some foliage, which are also often green colored. So perhaps greenness is performing a cryptic function for tarantulas. And oftentimes, I'm sure you might know that the tarantulas are very rarely fully green. Often it's just the cephalothorax or the abdomen or parts of the legs that are green. So because of this, we think that the exact nature of the crypsis is for disruption, just by having the color to break up among the leaves. When we look at blue coloration, this is what we find. So 5 gains of the trait are what I recovered, but then there are 7 losses, which are represented by the double brown bars on the branches. And we verify here that the most ancestral tarantula had blue colors. And if you just look at the losses, many of them are concentrated in the neotropics, whereas many of the gains of the trait, such as on the top part of the phylogeny, are concentrated in the Old World. In fact, everything except for the most ancestral gain of blueness is gained in the Old World species. So just an interesting geographical difference there. However, when we tested for correlations between blue color and other traits, there was no correlation. So the function of blueness was still mysterious. But this is why we decided to look more deeply into opsin proteins. And so we generated a network of opsin homologues in tarantulas. If you see the larger hexagons, such as SWS on the left, these are reference opsin protein types. And SWS is shortwave sensitive. It means it helps the animal to see in blue range and UV. The rest of the reference opsins are all colored according to what color they help the animal to perceive. Then the smaller connecting nodes are different homologues we recovered in the tarantula data set that we used. And so the blue smaller nodes are blue tarantulas, the green smaller nodes are green tarantulas, brown ones are where the tarantula doesn't have any color. Well, not blue or green color anyway. And what we're seeing is that most tarantulas, regardless of their color, have a lot of different opsins. In fact, they have a perfectly normal, diverse suite of arthropod opsins. And this is interesting because it means that on a molecular level, we cannot exclude their ability to perceive colors. And so this leads us to think about future directions. If they are perceiving the colors like this opsin diversity is suggesting, well, what are they using them for? And we will need to perform behavioral tests to verify this. But as you might know, many tarantula species display sexual dimorphism in the form of delayed maturation. So this image on the bottom right is an Asian species, Lampropelma violacipes. And on the left is the male, which you see is quite scrawny and brown. And on the right is the female, which is the vibrant blue one. And sometimes it's different. Sometimes the male is more vibrant and the female is more drab colored. But perhaps there's some sexual signaling here from mate choices. There's also the possibility that, seeing as the males are the ones who wander outside of their burrows looking for females, perhaps there's different selective pressures, maybe under moonlight conditions, because tarantulas are active late in the day into the nighttime. Maybe the male is less conspicuous to predators under these conditions if he is blue. And so just a quick list of conclusions for the work. My data supports a cryptic function for greenness in arboreal tarantulas. And while blue color doesn't correlate with any trait, the fact that opsins are so abundant in tarantulas means that they might be able to perceive colors. And this could be used in some mate signaling, perhaps, but we need more behavioral tests. And there are a lot of different organizations that are involved in helping me to perform this study and to present today. And so here they are listed on this slide. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions you might have.